All right, so the reason I say Jamaica is still in play, even though this is going south, is because look at this, all right? It looks like it's not going to hit, right? All right, these stragglers are not going to happen. It's mainly going to be this, all right? We're likely going to have Melissa just a couple hundred miles south of Jamaica, and that's going to be already throwing storm surge and stuff on water, on land and stuff. So that's one reason Jamaica's still in play. Another reason is as we head in towards Monday, look at that northerly turn. All right, this could make landfall as we head in towards early next week. All right, so Jamaica, you guys are not out of play by any means with this. All right, literally all the members take this right into the area of Jamaica. All right, evacuation needs to be promoted ASAP. All right, even if the government doesn't say so, I highly recommend it, and other meteorologists would likely recommend it as well. Even the National Hurricane Center. In addition to that, Eastern Cuba and Western Haiti will also need to keep an eye on this for some impacts as well. All right, now let's take a look at some hurricane models now that we have a general idea that the track is unfortunately going to be right into Jamaica. So let's take a look at our hurricane models here, all right? As we head into Sunday afternoon, which is tomorrow, only some scattered activity going on from the outer bands, outer bands of Melissa. The major impacts don't start until Monday. This is when we could start getting some heavier, more widespread outer band activity that could start to cause some flooding, maybe some minor storm surge for the southern flank of Jamaica. But you see the core of the storm is still offshore, all right? So we're still not going to have major impacts. I will say, though, that the impacts start on Monday because all this rain coming down will likely lead to flooding, all right? So the impacts the storm technically does start on Monday. As we head into Monday evening, notice here we have just a very powerful hurricane offshore of southern Jamaica. This is when we could start seeing storm surge issues along the southern coasts of Jamaica. In addition to that, our outer band activity is going to pick up, and by Tuesday morning, this is when we could start to see the outer eye wall start to make its appearance in Jamaica. All right, notice here 936 millibar low could easily be very much stronger if this thing decides to do a rapid intensification thing as we head in towards this weekend. All right, it is already doing it, as a matter of fact, on this Saturday afternoon. It could do it again tomorrow or Monday, though, so that's something to definitely keep an eye on there. But I want you guys to focus here, all right? If I have viewers in Jamaica, please pay attention. If not, I would still pay attention because this is going to make headlines. All right, notice here how your onshore flow is going like this. All right, this is not good. All right, when you have strong winds combined with heavy rain over the ocean, headed right towards, the wind direction headed right towards the coast, that is bad. All right, there is likely going to be some significant storm surge going on across the southern portion of Jamaica as we head in towards early Tuesday morning. In addition to that, this thing looks to try to make landfall Tuesday morning. All right, now this timing may fluctuate. Bottom line, you guys shouldn't even know about it because you should be evacuated by now, all right? All right, please evacuate if you haven't already, for goodness sake. All right, because the impacts start tomorrow, and it's only going to get worse from there, all right? Your storm surge impacts are going to get worse as this starts to approach, and your winds are going to ultimately start picking up as well. However, I will say, no matter if this storm makes landfall or not, which it will likely make landfall on Jamaica, that's almost certain, but for some reason, if it doesn't, we're still going to have very heavy rain, very widespread storm surge, very widespread flooding issues, and beach erosion. All right, but worst case scenario happens. If this happens, we're going to be dealing with obviously 130 to 140 plus mile per hour sustained winds, possibly gusts as high as 200 miles an hour. Could have a Category 5 landfall potentially, all right? This model not really handling the intensity too well when it comes to, Category 5 or anything, but it's at the least going to be a major hurricane when this makes landfall, all right? So please make sure you're watching if you live in Jamaica. And now taking our look at our country's weather over the course of the next 7 to 10 days. Notice here, we're pretty quiet across the country, all right? High pressure, Canadian high pressure, I should say, in control, keeping these areas pretty quiet. Maybe some snow flurries in eastern Canada this afternoon. But other than that, it's quiet. Low pressure system sitting here, bringing about severe weather and an atmospheric river over here. So I lied. Maybe it's not as quiet as I previously thought, but it is pretty quiet across the country. But in addition to that, as we head into the daytime hours tomorrow, we will be watching that storm system to move into the Arklatex and Arklamis region, I should say, maybe for some more isolated to scattered severe threat across the Gulf Coast, specifically the northern Florida panhandle, back into southern Alabama and southern Mississippi, where a damaging wind, hail, and isolated tornado threat could be realized if we could get enough clearing. And then as we head into the daytime hours on Monday, we're likely going to get another storm system that'll bring some rain and wind to areas of the northern plains and upper Midwest. Not much snow expected on the backside of that, but we could have maybe a couple of flurries mixing in, perhaps close to this, if we could get enough moisture. In addition to that, we will likely be watching for some showers to pop off across areas of Texas, back up into Wisconsin. Not really going to be much moisture there for severe weather, but we can't rule out maybe a couple rumbles of thunder as this thing gets going. But as we head into the daytime hours on Wednesday, the 29th, notice here, this low pressure system sits here. This is a 540 contour down in the southeastern United States, folks. So that would tell you that I wouldn't rule out a flurry down here. All right, I'm not ruling out a flurry down there with all this cold air advection happening. All right, so a flurry in Arkansas wouldn't surprise me on Wednesday. Over here, we're likely going to have lots of rain, gusty winds. It's not really going to be the best of days over there across the southeastern United States, or the Ohio Valley for that matter. But as we take it into Thursday, this is when we could be watching out for a big storm system to ride up the East Coast with some wind and very heavy rain across these areas. Maybe some snowflakes mixing in from time to time across these areas, but I don't think the snow is going to be a big thing with this system. Here comes Melissa. It's not really going to be a factor with this storm system, so we're just going to let this play until we get into the day on Friday, specifically Friday morning. Notice here we have a 992 millibar low pressure system here, all right? Notice how close these lines are together. That indicates very high wind gusts, all right? So there's probably going to be a windstorm somewhere in this area with this as we head in towards late next week, all right? At least as high as 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts. And then as we head into the next weekend, the weather looks to be maybe a bit more quiet. However, it looks like we could get a pattern change going as we head in towards next weekend, with perhaps some clipper systems starting to make an appearance from Canada and kind of sliding through this general vicinity right here. That could bring the first snowflakes of the season to these areas. In addition to that, a lot more wind energy. In addition to that, a lot more shower activity. So really active pattern, really looking to ramp up as we head in towards November. And taking a look at our severe weather threat as we head in towards this evening, specifically tonight across Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. Notice here we have a big old slob of rain across this area, which will stabilize the atmosphere in these areas the rest of this afternoon. So no severe storms expected over there. However, look behind this, all right? You have lots of clearing ahead of what is going to be our next storm system, all right? Like I said before, we highlighted that. And look, fuels the fire for thunderstorms as we head in towards this evening, all right? 6, 7 to 8 p.m., perhaps some very strong storms rolling through Waco, Killeen, and Austin, Texas, with all hazards being possible, mainly hail and damaging winds, but the threat of a tornado or two wouldn't surprise me. And then we get a brief damaging wind threat, which could be a bit more widespread as we head in towards tonight. But look at these supercells blowing up, guys, all right? Look at Mississippi, Louisiana, back into southeast Texas. these are going to be working with a lot of moisture and cold air aloft at the same time. So there's going to be a humongous hail risk with this, maybe up to baseball-sized hail in some areas. So that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on there. In addition to that, I wouldn't be surprised if we have an elevated tornado risk across southeast Texas, back in towards Louisiana, where I wouldn't be surprised if we have maybe a strong tornado specifically overnight across these areas. So make sure you have your phone alerts on and have, multiple other ways to receive the alerts too. Before this final round moves through, as we head in towards 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning here, notice here very, very strong windy storms blowing through western Mississippi, much of Louisiana. We're probably going to have lots of special weather statements, lots of severe thunderstorm warnings, maybe a few tornado warnings with this line as we head in towards this time frame. This model kind of hinting at maybe a shelf cloud type setup across this area. So if this is the case, we'd be dealing with very strong outflow winds at this point, which means at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning, we could be dealing with possibly as high as 80-mile-per-hour winds across this area if this bows out the way this looks, all right? So we're going to have to keep an eye on that as we head in towards that time frame. Bottom line, though, a nasty storm setup across these areas as we head in towards this evening, with the threat of tornadoes most likely in southeast Texas, southern Louisiana, and the threat of hail likely in these same areas. I'm Severe Storm Filmer. Have a great rest of your day. Make sure, as always, you like, subscribe. Not already, leave any comments, questions down below. Have a great rest of your night, everybody. And if you're down there in Jamaica or the Caribbean, please evacuate before it's too late. In addition to that, stay safe in Louisiana, Texas, as well as Mississippi. Have a good day, everybody, and stay safe out there.